Good evening and welcome to NTD News. I'm Cindy Drucare. Hurricane Dorian finally vacating Grand Bahama Island after days of deadly winds, rain, and storm surge. It's now churning along the southeast U.S. coast as a weakened Category 2.
Dorian's path of destruction has finally begun its march up the southeastern coast after hammering the Bahamas with 130-mile-per-hour winds, a 10 to 15-foot storm surge, and claiming at least 5 lives.
Many homes, businesses, and other buildings have been completely or partially destroyed.
Currently a weakened Category 2 storm, Dorian is still forecast to leave a lasting impact on parts of the Florida Peninsula, Georgia, South Carolina, and North Carolina. Officials are advising residents to continue taking preparations seriously, but acknowledge that the threat of the worst-case scenario may have passed.
I think we're fortunate that this will have minimal impact on Florida. It's still not over yet, so be prepared for any scenario.
Florida's coast is still under hurricane warning from Jupiter Inlet to Ponte Vedra Beach, and hurricane-force winds, 75 miles per hour or more, are still expected in this area Tuesday evening. Coastal flooding is also expected in Florida, Georgia, and South Carolina. On Wednesday, Dorian is expected to move along the northeast Florida, Georgia, and southern South Carolina coasts, accompanied by beach erosion, strong winds, and storm surge. By Thursday, it will bring coastal and rainfall flooding to the Carolinas, where the eye of the storm may make landfall.
The U.S. Coast Guard today suspending search efforts after a charter boat was destroyed by fire off the Southern California coast. At least 25 bodies have been recovered in what's now considered one of the area's worst ever maritime disasters.
As of 9:40 a.m. Tuesday, the Coast Guard has halted all search efforts pending further developments, despite some of the boat's passengers being unaccounted for.
We know that this is a very difficult time for families and friends of the victims. We have suspended these search efforts due to no additional individuals having been witnessed entering the water. Our last aircraft overflight this morning has revealed that no additional signs of distress or debris has been witnessed.
The fire broke out aboard the Conception, a 75-foot boat, at about 3:15 a.m. just off the shore of Santa Cruz Island. Officials explained that passengers slept in the ship's lower quarters, while 5 of the crew members who were above deck escaped. Santa Barbara County Sheriff Bill Brown spoke to reporters about the recovery process.
Since many, if not all, of the victims who have been recovered will need to be identified through DNA analysis, investigators will be coordinating, commencing today, with family members to collect DNA samples for comparison purposes.
The Conception, according to Worldwide Diving Adventures website, was on a 3-day dive excursion to the Channel Islands and was due back to Santa Barbara at 5 p.m. on Monday. The cause has yet to be determined.
And in Texas, one of the largest supermarket chains in the U.S. responded today to the tragic shooting that took place under its roof. NTD's Miguel Moreno has more on Walmart's decision to stop the sale of handgun ammunition.
It's a response to the El Paso shooting that left nearly 24 dead and its 2 associates in Mississippi also shot and killed. Walmart CEO stated that the supermarket will discontinue the sale of handgun ammunition, ammunition for military-style weapons, and lastly, stop selling handguns in Alaska, the last state it sold them in. We spoke with the executive director of Texas Gun Sense, who said that one of their concerns is easy access to firearms or ammunition.
Walmart is ubiquitous across Texas, across the country, so it should have a significant impact on gun safety.
The CEO also said he would encourage Congress and the president to consider what he called common sense measures, such as stronger background checks and removing weapons from those determined to pose an imminent risk or red flag laws. Switzer said her organization supports red flag laws or extreme risk protection orders, adding that they believe in responsible gun ownership. But those in opposition believe it'll be hard to determine who is and isn't at risk and could even lead to the violation of an individual's rights. Walmart also no longer wants customers to openly carry firearms in its stores. Miguel Moreno, NTD News.
Trump warning China today not to drag its feet on a trade deal. In a tweet, Trump said that if China waits for a change in administration, it'll be hemorrhaging jobs and companies for over a year before the election. He also warned that if he wins 2020, the deal will get much tougher, possibly a reference to the freedom he'll have in his second term. The two countries have traded tariffs on each other's goods, some of which went into effect yesterday. Trump maintains that his relationship with China's leader is good, but says he won't tolerate the current trade imbalance. Former Secretary of Defense James Mattis on a book tour in New York, and despite being pressed for comments several times, Mattis refused to talk about the policies of the current administration. He's saying it's not his job, and instead he called on the nation to switch from being divided to being united.
During his appearance at the Council on Foreign Relations to promote his new book, General Mattis said his job is to do his duty when asked, and that it wouldn't be right to just start talking after leaving the job.
We've got a president and a secretary of state and a secretary of defense trying to protect this great big experiment that you and I call America, and I'm not going to make their job more difficult by a former secretary of defense speaking now for what I would call the cheap seats, not responsible for anything, up there talking about it.
He said he will leave that debate and assessment to the American people.
I've got a lot of trust in the American people.
Mattis also called for stopping the divisiveness in the country, saying people should leave the next generation with a country that's in good or better shape than they inherited it.
Elections are about dividing in order to get elected. I understand that. But governing's about uniting. And right now, we seem to stay in a constant election mode. And I see us as, let's just get together and figure out how to solve the problems together.
Mattis was appointed by then-President-elect Donald Trump and served as Secretary of Defense since January 2017. He resigned in January this year. Mattis also addressed the ongoing pro-democracy protests in Hong Kong. He said the authoritarian mode the Chinese regime uses against its own people makes it hard to believe that it will treat foreigners any better. He says the U.S. can no longer be mired in its own desire and should see China as it is. It needs to cooperate when possible, but confront the regime when it must. Penny Zhou, NTD News.
A Catholic school in Tennessee has removed the Harry Potter books from its library after the school's priest decided that they conflict with Catholic moral values.
Father Rehill, a pastor at St. Edward Catholic School, said he consulted exorcists in the U.S. and Rome who recommended removing the books. In an email obtained by the Tennessean, Rehill wrote, "The curses and spells used in the books are actual curses and spells, which when read by a human being risk conjuring evil spirits into the presence of the person reading the text." Rehill said that the characters in the books promote a Machiavellian approach to achieving the ends they desire. Whereas, he said, Catholic moral theology teaches that the means and the ends must be good for any good to come about. Catholic Diocese of Nashville Superintendent Rebecca Hamill said Rehill sent the email after a parent asked about the books, and she said he has the final say at school. The move isn't the first time the Harry Potter books have been banned from an educational setting. Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI even weighed in on the controversy when he was a cardinal, writing in 2003 that the books deeply distort Christianity in the soul before it can grow properly. NTD News.
President Mike Pence in the Republic of Ireland today, where he reassured leaders that the U.S. remains committed to preserving the Good Friday Agreement. This as Brexit brings uncertainty to the relationship between the U.K. and the Republic, which will remain in the European Union.
We will continue to encourage the United Kingdom and Ireland to ensure that any Brexit deal respects the Good Friday Agreement.
The Good Friday Agreement is a peace deal reached between the UK's Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland, which is its own country. The agreement was signed 21 years ago and stopped the fighting and violence between the two countries. It also allowed free travel between the nations, something that could be threatened if the UK breaks away from the EU. UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson said he would work to renegotiate the Good Friday Agreement if the UK leaves the EU without a deal.
These have been well worked out and involve measures such as trusted trader schemes, transit provisions, frontier zones, reduced bureaucracy for smaller local traders, and many others.
In the U.S., House Speaker Nancy Pelosi responded to news of a potential U.S.-UK trade deal last month by saying that if Brexit undermines the Good Friday Accord, there will be no chance of the trade deal passing Congress. While visiting Ireland, Pence brought his mother with him, who is a first-generation Irish American. Her grandmother was born in a town called Doonbeg, where Pence stayed during his trip. He drew criticism from some Democrats at home, however, for staying at the Trump International Golf Links and Hotel in Doonbeg.
I understand political attacks by Democrats, but if you have a chance to get to Doonbeg, you'll find it's a fairly small place. And the opportunity to stay at Trump National in Doonbeg to accommodate the unique footprint that comes with our security detail and other personnel made it logical.
He said he checked with the State Department before deciding where to stay. Holly Kellum, NTD News.
White House advisor Ivanka Trump in Colombia today, saying that women entrepreneurs are critical to the Latin American nation's future well-being.
Ivanka Trump made the remarks at a launch event for the Academy of Women Entrepreneurs, or AWE, a U.S. government-funded initiative aimed at reducing barriers to women's economic participation.
AWE, as it's otherwise known, appropriately, is designed to equip women with the practical skills they need to create sustainable businesses and to participate more fully in the global economy. This is particularly important in Colombia, where women play an increasingly critical role in the country's economic development and continued transition to peace.
Colombia has long been the United States' closest ally in the region and is the first stop on Ivanka's Latin American tour that will also include Paraguay and Argentina. Ivanka, who was accompanied at the event by Colombian Vice President Marta Lucía Ramirez, said that 40 Colombian women will initially benefit from participation in the program.
And in Hong Kong, thousands of protesters rallied at the iconic Tamar Park in front of government offices today on the second day of a citywide strike. NTD's Jeremy Sandberg is on location with the details.
Protests originally began in opposition to a now suspended extradition bill that would allow individuals to be sent to mainland China for trial. Many protesters cover their faces to try to keep their identities hidden to prevent retaliation from the Hong Kong government and the Chinese communist regime.
Everyone has a bad feeling that China will abuse this and they might persecute political or religious dissidents in Hong Kong.
Workers, students, and residents took part in the two-day strike.
I feel that I need to voice out, and before we can't voice out anymore.
I hope the Carrie Lam will step down.
The citizens have 5 demands for the government of Hong Kong. They want the extradition bill to be fully withdrawn, followed by an independent inquiry into police actions. Citizens are also calling for authorities to retract previous characterizations of protesters as rioters, for those arrested during the protest to be exonerated and released, and for open, direct elections.
The most heated topic is whether the independent commissions of inquiries, and we emphasize that this inquiry is not only focused on any one group of the people. It's talking about the entire extradition bill's problems. How does it occur and how was the handling?
People are growing frustrated with leadership being unable to resolve problems in Hong Kong.
Pro-government allegations saying that protesters like these young ones, they probably taken money from America, from the foreign influences. And under this investigation, they should be making clear that who was the one so-called taking money.
With over 1,000 protesters arrested since mid-June and the level of police violence escalating, citizens are here to send a clear message to the government that they want an independent inquiry into what's going on and the extradition bill to be fully withdrawn. Jeremy Sandberg, NTD News, Hong Kong.
And also in Hong Kong, Chief Executive Carrie Lam saying today that she's never offered to step down. This comes a day after an audio recording emerged of her saying she would quit if she had a choice.
In the press conference, Lam said her government had the confidence of Beijing and could bring an end to the current crisis. She also denied offering resignation to the Chinese regime.
I have not even contemplated to discuss a resignation with the Central People's Government. The choice of not resigning is my own choice.
Her comments came less than 24 hours after a leaked audio recording obtained by Reuters was published. In the closed-door meeting, the chief executive can be heard saying she had caused havoc for introducing the extradition bill and that it was unforgivable.
If I have a choice, the first thing is to quit. Having made a deep apology is to step down. So I make a plea to you for your forgiveness.
Lam said her ability to resolve the crisis was very, very limited, as the issue had been elevated to a national level, a reference to the leadership in Beijing. The remarks suggest Beijing has been directing the Hong Kong government's response to the months of protest. Lam added she was disappointed her speech had been leaked, but doesn't deny the authenticity of the audio recording. Tang Baiqiao, former 1989 Tiananmen Square uprising student leader and president of the Democracy Academy of China, posted on his Twitter account saying that the leaked audio proves that Carrie Lam is not at liberty to quit and that she has become a puppet of the Chinese Communist Party. NTD News.
And a showdown in the UK Parliament. British lawmakers won a vote to seize control of the legislative agenda in the House of Commons. NTD's Jane Werrell has the details.
To make his application.
The Speaker approved an emergency debate and vote in the House of Commons.
Sir, it will be rewarded.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Boris Johnson was defeated 328 to 301 as British lawmakers won a vote to seize control of parliamentary business.
Not a good start, Boris.
Order. The ayes to the right, 328. The noes to the left, 301. So the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Boris Johnson said he'll push for an early election. Many members of Parliament are against a no-deal Brexit, but they now have less time to pass legislation to stop it. This is because the Queen agreed to a request by Johnson to shut down Parliament for 5 weeks, which could start as early as September the 9th.
I think this is one of the real challenges around Brexit, not just now, but generally, that there's been a lot of use of procedure and convention in unconventional ways.
There are 3 ongoing legal battles against Johnson's decision to shut down Parliament. But supporters say it's a routine procedure. Johnson has also warned rebel lawmakers that if they vote against no deal, they face expulsion from the Conservative Party. Johnson had a wafer-thin majority of 1 seat in the House of Commons on Tuesday, but by the evening he had none, with former Conservative Minister Philip Lee defecting to the anti-Brexit Liberal Democrat Party. Reporting in London, Jane Werrell, NTD News.
And there's a new top dog at number 10 Downing Street, and it's not British Prime Minister Boris Johnson.
Adopted by Johnson, the latest arrival is a 15-week-old Jack Russell puppy. Coming from an animal rescue charity in South Wales, it's hoped the puppy's publicized adoption will raise awareness of Lucy's Law, a crackdown on puppy farms which mistreat young dogs. The puppy joins Downing Street's other resident, Larry the cat, who carries the official title of Chief Mouser to the Cabinet Office. It's not yet clear how the 2 animals will get along.
The French government is set to propose a controversial medical bill by the end of September that will make it easier for women to get abortions and make surrogacy legal, among other things. The bill has faced pushback from a number of doctors and French citizens. David Vivez has the details.
Tensions are high ahead of the introduction of a controversial bill in Parliament September 24th by France's president that deals with abortion, fetal research, and the authorization of surrogacy. Unlike in the United States, where surrogacy is unrestricted, surrogacy has been banned in France for almost 3 decades. The new bill would open it up couples and single mothers who want to surrogate, including homosexuals and trans couples. And not only would surrogacy be legal, but it could possibly be covered by welfare programs, allowing women who pay for artificial insemination or surrogate mothers to be reimbursed.
French people need to know that the use of surrogate mothers costs 15,000 euros.
In one national poll last November, 80% of French people said they were against surrogacy. However, it has strong support from groups in the LGBTQ movement and the Freemasons.
It is very strange. The law said there would be a national referendum and debates, and very clearly the published public comments. The government's response was, "Who cares? We want it."
The controversial bill also makes it easier for women to get an abortion. In France, doctors can refuse to perform abortions. The new bill would make it a public service. According to this pro-life doctor, by making abortion a public service, the law could force all doctors to perform abortions.
In France, after authorizing abortion, the law will make it a public service. So in any public hospital, there must be a unit dedicated to abortions.
The bill was a campaign promise of French President Emmanuel Macron. The bill has become a flashpoint in French politics and has sparked heated public debate in the lead-up to its introduction. David Vives, NTD News.
While Hollywood monopolizes the film industry, more independents are making their mark with a resurgence in art house films and now more ways to reach audiences. The first Montgomery International Film Festival is part of that.
Art house films have always been there from the beginning in the hearts and minds of filmmakers, and they will continue to be.
The first Montgomery International Film Festival was held at Gaithersburg, Maryland at the end of August. It attracted professionals from the US and abroad. Nearly 1,000 films participated. The theme was Return to Art House Films.
Individual producers, they have their own interests. It's not always about, like, oh, let me make a movie that's going to be popular for the audience. Like an art house film, it's got to be something that is of interest to me. So like a social message or something socially that I agree with.
Art house film, relatively speaking, it can stick to its original position, both in its content and form. It stands relatively fast. The development of digital film technology and the internet has made the creation and distribution of art house films easier and more convenient. Some non-professionals also join in.
It's wonderful the time that we're living because it opens up the world for everyone that has a message to share, or they just want to be creative, or maybe they want to make people laugh.
And of course things have become much wider now because you can make a film for very little budget, but you can also make a film for a very large budget.
It is easier now, and anyone can make a film, so we have to start paying more attention to the quality issue, because films are an art form after all. A good story also needs to be told in a good way. It is estimated that there are 4,000 to 6,000 film festivals around the world each year, providing film artists with many opportunities to show their work. The Montgomery International Film Festival also wants to build a platform to connect independent filmmakers with investors and distributors, offering more opportunities for outstanding art house and independent films. Reporting by Kitty Wong, NTD News.
And that's all for today's NTD News. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Cindy Drucare.